Hello, I want to welcome you all to this National Good Food Network webinar, Third-Party Certification. My name is Jeff Farbman from the Wallace Center at Winrock International. I'll speak a little bit more about the National Good Food Network in a bit, but first let me give you the briefest possible technical orientation. Your webinar screen should look like this. Over here on the left is the presentation, the slide area, and on the right is the control panel. Over in the control panel is a questions box. You are muted during the presentation, so please use the questions box to type your questions for our presenters. This webinar will be archived on the ngfn.org website. Go to ngfn.org/webinars. You'll also find all of the previous NGFN webinars archived there. If you've missed any, that's the place to go. Finally, I wanted to encourage you to complete our post-webinar survey. It really will just take a minute. I think there's 4 questions, but it helps us to continue to improve our webinars and our outreach. The National Good Food Network, managed by the Wallace Center at Winrock International, has a focus on scaling up good food. Our vision is that using a market-based approach, we can significantly increase the quantity of healthy, green, fair, and affordable food in the food system. The National Good Food Network members are from all parts of the food value chain, from farmers and producers, processors, aggregators and distributors, to retail, nonprofit, technical assistance providers, government, researchers, and funders, to name just a few. The National Good Food Network aims to support small and mid-sized producers who are using sustainable agricultural practices, as well as the people and organizations looking to support and to do business with these producers. The NGFN is made up of 10 regional lead teams throughout the U.S. Each lead team is well connected to the good food efforts in their region, and they serve to coordinate the activities within that region. They are, in a sense, the hubs in their region. The leaders of each regional lead team, in addition to some other national experts, including Scott Exo, our first presenter today, serve as the advisory council of the National Good Food Network. In concert with the Wallace Center at Winrock International, the advisory council connects the regions to each other, connects the network to funding opportunities, and connects the network members to the best of the best knowledge and case studies on scaling up good food. One way the network disseminates knowledge is through webinars like this one on third-party certification featuring Food Alliance. So without further ado, I'll introduce our first presenter. Scott Exo is Executive Director at Food Alliance, a national nonprofit that works at the juncture of values, business, and science to define sustainability in agriculture and the food industry. Food Alliance operates a third-party certification program for environmentally friendly and socially responsible agricultural and food handling practices. Before joining Food Alliance in 1999, Scott worked on farm and forest land conservation issues for 1,000 Friends of Oregon, managed rural development and study abroad programs in Asia and Africa, and was an organizational consultant. Scott serves on the National Good Food Network's Advisory Council, the Oregon Department of Ag, Oregon State University Food Innovation Center Advisory Board, and the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch Advisory Board. He is a past member of the City of Portland Multnomah Food Policy Council. Scott holds dual master's degrees in geography and urban and rural planning from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Scott?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. I want to acknowledge and thank the Wallace Center and the National Good Food Network for providing the opportunity to share a bit about what we've learned over a decade and almost a decade and a half of providing third-party certification and sharing with you what the certification landscape looks like today. I'm also grateful to my fellow travelers in this journey, Peter Truitt from Truitt Brothers and Alison Dennis. I think after they've had an opportunity to present, I hope you all will appreciate the very pivotal role that each of them play in from within inside the food system of making the kinds of transformations that many of us believe are important. I'm also gratified that so many interested folks are taking part in the webinar today, and we appreciate your interest. I think most of us have probably heard the old joke about the Buddhist monk who says to the hot dog man, "Make me one with everything." But in my experience, many fewer people have heard the comeback line when the monk asks the guy why he hasn't returned the change from his $20 bill. And the hot dog man says, "Ah, but change must come from within." Now that's a bad joke, but it underscores a point about, I think, what we're talking about here today, which is fundamentally that change is happening within the food system, and that there are some important tools and important allies to make those changes from within the system. So if you don't remember the joke, just please remember that we're working from within the system to make positive change. Certification, I believe, if applied well, can be a very effective tool for change in the food system. But like any tool, it is not one size fits all, and like all tools, it's a lot about how you use it. And we'll talk about that to a greater extent later in the presentation. The first thing to understand, I think, in beginning to sort through certification and label claims is the difference between the kinds of claims that one can see on packaging and made in the marketplace. In this world, we tend to talk about first, second, and third-party claims. A first-party claim being one issued by a producer or a company without any kind of independent review associated with that claim. A claim about a practice to use precision agriculture to reduce fertilizer in agricultural production is a good example of that. A second-party claim, and we're starting to see more of these in the marketplace, is one associated with standards or guidelines issued by industry parties themselves, often trade or membership associations representing the interest of a particular sector in the food industry. Many of us have seen the claim on dairy products, for example, saying our dairy farmers pledge not to use artificial growth hormones. That's an example of a second-party claim. A third-party claim is one backed or issued or represented by an independent organization, independent from the product or the company making said claim. And a fair trade certification claim is a great example of that. You'll see a couple references on these slides to a very useful website. On the lower corner of your screen is a URL for that site, greenerchoices.org/eco-labels. Consumers Union has done for label claims of many types, even beyond food, what they do for washing machines and DVD players. They've helped the consumers sort through what lies behind claims, who backs those claims, and helps people sort through what differentiates good claims in the marketplace from those that are rather empty. The other thing that is important to understand is why companies would seek certification, or why certification is a useful tool in the marketplace, both from a business perspective and from a social change perspective. And this is how I would distill the answer to that question. Growers and companies want to differentiate and add value to their products. And increasingly they want to do that based on attributes beyond the rather traditional attributes of price, quality, and freshness. Buyers increasingly want a reliable purchasing screen, how they decide what to buy and what to say no to. And sustainability and other factors are increasingly a part of that screening process. Advocates, individual advocates and advocacy organizations want better social and environmental outcomes and tools to gauge those outcomes. They want reliable tools to make that process relatively simple. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, consumers want good food grown responsibly. This combination of considerations among different players in the food system is important to understand as we think about how one uses certification to best advantage as a tool for change. The other thing that I think it's important to understand is the difference between certification as a compliance tool on the one hand and certification as a strategy for farmers and food brands to adding value to products. In the first instance, compliance is really about responding sort of reactively to buyers' demands for meeting of a certain standard. And the GAP certification that we tend to hear more about these days, whether it's USDA GAP for food safety or global GAP for a host of food safety and other issues, is an example of buyer-dictated audits that growers feel or are wondering whether they need to be compliant with in order to stay on the shelf, essentially. The other category, and the one I think we'll spend the most time talking about today, is the category of what I call adding value. Proactively differentiating products and brands based on performance against an independently issued and audited standard. And that, again, makes reference back to the independent third-party verification about which we're talking today. And some examples of that, of course, are Fair Trade Certification, Biodynamic, Organic Food Alliance, and we'll talk about a few others further on in the presentation. But one of the ways to think about this distinction is the distinction between compliance on the one hand and opportunity on the other hand. And I would argue, and Food Alliance really believes, that the opportunity side of the equation is really where the greatest opportunities are for change in the food system, when we can appeal to companies and growers' instincts to compete and compete on the basis of performance in new ways. Here's what Greener Choices has to say about what makes a credible and eco-label. They talk about the label being meaningful and verifiable, that the standards themselves are meaningful and can be verified, and the performance against those standards can be verified, that they be consistent and clear. So for a set of certification standards that apply to a multitude of products, that there's some consistency between the meeting of that certification on an apple and a dairy product, for example. That the standards be transparent, that they can be accessed and read and understood by the public. And that the protocols for verifying how those standards are audited against need also be apparent. That the organization and the standards that organization promulgates be independent and free from conflict of interest, and that the process of developing and refining standards be open to public comment. That's really the pinnacle of credibility as Consumers Union defines it with regard to certification programs. The other thing we know about certification programs based on consumer research is that the organization behind the label matters. This is a representation, from a graph taken from work by the Hartman Group based in Bellevue, Washington, which is looked to by many in the food industry, particularly the natural and organic food industry, to discern what sensibilities consumers have about organic and sustainability issues and how those sensibilities manifest in the marketplace. So in this instance, the question asked of respondents was, who would you prefer provide certification? And as you can see, independent nonprofit organizations are significantly more trusted than either government agencies or companies themselves as the source of assurance in a certification program. Now, this is a subject that is very near and dear to my heart. We hear many people talk about the promulgation of many certifications and labels, and I'm here to suggest that it needn't be so hard. There are certainly many claims made about products. There are phrases of many types used on products. But if you think about the Consumers Union definition of what constitutes a meaningful certification and label, and you apply an additional filter to ask which labels are in fairly widespread use, at least in multiple regions of North America, backed by independent third-party organizations and used on multiple products. If you apply those screens to the conundrum of many labels, you actually end up with a very small handful of labels. And I've represented most, though certainly not all of them here. Fair trade we've all heard of. That applies to products currently only that are imported into the United States. Fair trade certification is not currently being used in North America on North American products. USDA Organic is the widest known certification, independent third-party certification. It is in many ways the mother of all eco-labels because it's been around the longest. It's now enshrined in federal law, and it covers the broadest array of products of any certification program available in North America. Rainforest Alliance, like Food Alliance, has a very broad approach to certification and certification criteria, but it only applies currently to products sourced outside North America. And then we have certifications which are focused on specific issues. So there's not a breadth of sustainability issues, but a narrow and specific focus with some depth, in this case to animal welfare issues, the most popular being certified humane and animal welfare approved. And lastly, we have the Marine Stewardship Council, which is certifying whole fisheries throughout the globe and whose products are gaining significant traction in North American and European marketplaces, and then indeed that certification is being used by large industry players to define sustainable procurement guidelines for their companies. So I hope this is helpful to help you sort some of the wheat from the chaff when you think about the kinds of certifications that really are very robust and have, shall we say, velocity in the current marketplace throughout the country. So let me talk a little bit about the certification that I know best, which is Food Alliances, and give you a little context for how that came about and how we deploy it. As Jeff said, we think about our organization as working at the intersection of science, business, and values. Science telling us what defines success, what kinds of methodologies for growing food yield the best outcome for the environment and for people working in those systems. Business, because we're appealing to business sensibilities about how to remain profitable and sustain an economic livelihood while also paying attention to the science and the values and sensibilities of our culture about how we endure on this planet and provide ourselves with good food. We use the certification program as a methodology for promoting our definition of sustainability as enshrined in the certification standards that we produce and promoting safe and fair working conditions, humane treatment of animals, and careful stewardship of ecosystems. The methodology for creating Food Alliance's certification is really an outgrowth of its roots in an approach to defining success and sustainability in the food system that embraces the perspectives of many stakeholders. Food Alliance's beginnings are with a confab of individuals even before the formulation of the nonprofit, from the food industry, from environmental, labor, and animal welfare organizations, as well as land-grant universities and government agencies. That Big Ten approach to defining success in the food system endures in the process by which we formulate and refine our standards today. So our offering to the food marketplace, if you will, is an independent third-party certification program that growers, processors, packers, and distributors use to differentiate and add value to their products. The certification for farms and ranches verifies that those applying for certification are providing safe and fair working conditions, humane care for livestock, that they're reducing, if not eliminating, their use of pesticides, conserving soil and water resources, protecting and enhancing wildlife habitat, and engaging in a process of continual improvement of their practices. We are changing the standards over time and raising the bar, if you will, but growers are required to set expectations about how they will improve their operations over time. In the food processing and packing world, we also offer certification for those using certified ingredients and providing many of those same sensibilities as a focus for their management practices. Conserving water and energy, recycling and reusing waste materials to reduce their footprint, and ensuring quality control and food handling. So to the greatest extent possible, the handling certification mirrors that focus at the farm. So a Food Alliance certified claim about a product means that 80% or more of the ingredients come from farms that have met those certification expectations, are not genetically engineered, do not use artificial colors or preservatives, artificial hormones, or subtherapeutic antibiotics in the raising of animal products. The certification footprint, excuse me, I went too many slides. Can you slide up for me, Jeff? Thank you. Right now, Food Alliance certifies over 320 individual certification clients, processors, farms, and ranches in 22 states, two Canadian provinces, and in one location in Mexico. The kinds of clients we have vary considerably, from co-ops and individual brands and processors in a variety of industries. We have fruit and vegetable packers, wineries, beef operations, single operations in beef, as well as cooperatives in Canada and the western United States as well. Fulton Provisions is a meat packing company in the Northwest, and Rogue Creamery, of course, is cheese products manufactured in Southern Oregon. I also wanted to mention the kinds of companies and the kinds of organizations that are increasingly using our certification and others, providing third-party audits as benchmarks for rating systems and guidelines to institutions. And those are the Green Guide for Healthcare, put forward by an organization called Healthcare Without Harm. ASHE, the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education for colleges and universities. Green Seal is a new certification for restaurants and food service that uses Food Alliance Organic and a series of other certifications as benchmarks for procurement. And LEED, the Green Building Certification Organization, uses Food Alliance certification as a benchmark for procurement in existing buildings that have food service operations. A number of companies also use Food Alliance certification as a benchmark for procurement purposes as well. Whole Foods, for example, is a major buyer of beef from the Country Natural Beef Co-op that we certify. Cisco Corporation has an independent audit process for its canned and frozen vegetable suppliers, for which we are a licensed auditor, but with whom we have also negotiated a sort of reciprocity. So Peter Truitt, for example, runs a company that is Food Alliance certified as a processor, but because of the agreement with Cisco, is able to fulfill their audit requirements for the internal Cisco program as a result of that arrangement. Many of you may have heard recently about the Walmart sustainability processes being put in place, and one of those is a supplier survey in which they ask food suppliers what kinds of, they ask a host of questions, one of which is what kinds of third-party certifications do you currently undertake? And Food Alliance is one of the certifications listed there. So I think we're at the point where I get to introduce Peter Truitt. Peter and his brother David took over a cannery in Salem, Oregon quite some years ago. I'm sure he can tell us exactly when, and eventually formed Truitt Brothers, Inc., which has from the beginning been more than just a food processing company. Peter and his brother represent the third generation of a food processing family and are leaders in bringing quality and innovation to the industry. They provide shelf-stable products for a wide variety of establishments, including restaurants and businesses to healthcare and retailers. Peter was raised in rural Louisiana in the 50s and early 60s. He left for boarding school in 1962, began college at Cornell in 64, and finally saw the light and finished at Oregon State. Peter was the first. Peter and his company were the first food processing company to undergo Food Alliance certification several years ago. So in terms of experience with that program, he has indeed the most. Peter, welcome.
Thank you, Scott, and good afternoon, everybody. Before I go further in my comments here, I want to spend just a few seconds on this depiction of one of our brands. It is a brand, a model of a brand that we utilize on our green beans that we process here in Salem that are Food Alliance certified. And what that means, of course, as Scott has already outlined for us all, is that the product was sourced from a grower here in the Willamette Valley nearby that is simultaneously a Food Alliance certified producer. And that fact is implicit in the emblem, certification emblem of Food Alliance that I'm pointing to here. What I'm really quite proud of is this little verbiage here just on the left side of our panel depicting the actual grower. Now this is a fictitious statement here since this represents a model that we use to actually finalize the label, but in every case when we are producing, in this case canning, a product that is Food Alliance certified, we identify on that package, on that brand, the grower that provided the product. We do the same with pears, and we do the same with our dry soaked beans. We recently introduced a pumpkin product out here in the Northwest in which we identify the grower of that product as well. Scott already touched on some parts of my past, but I will spend just a minute describing our company in a little bit more detail. That picture there is a picture of myself and my brother, and the background is purely Photoshop. It's not real, but it's not unlike a lot of terrain out here in the Willamette Valley of Oregon during the summertime. It's lovely. We've been in business for 37 years. We arrived on the scene here in Oregon in 1973. At that time, operating only a canning facility doing green beans, pears, cherries, and plums. And we still do all those items today in our canning facility, but we have expanded our capabilities to numerous other packaging systems. And all that we do is shelf stable. We do no frozen or refrigerated. In addition to the humble yet dignified can, we also process numerous kinds of value-added products in another facility located here in Salem, actually two facilities, and one located as well in eastern Kentucky. And all of these facilities process shelf-stable foods only. In this in more elaborated packaging, we're able to do a variety of products that do not lend themselves very well to canning, and so it really gives us an exciting array of possibility for packaging and safely processing a number of products. But it's important to point out, and I remind myself of this every day, that canning and thermal processing is our heritage. Scott mentioned I grew up in rural Louisiana around sweet potatoes, and my father was in the sweet potato canning business down in rural Louisiana. And his family, his brothers and sisters, operated a canning facility in Illinois in which they produced Midwest vegetables, corn, peas, asparagus, and pumpkin. Let's see if, here we go. Oh, I went too far. Here's some dates that are worth noting. In May of 2006, Scott pointed out, we ultimately achieved certification of our processing practices here, and we were delighted at that. It was the culmination of about a 7-month process as we kind of wound our way through the audit process and ultimately to certification. And it was for our can facility in which we were producing at that time Food Alliance certified canned green beans and Food Alliance certified canned Bartlett pears. In early October of 2009, namely last fall, we achieved Food Alliance certification of one of our value-added processing facilities here in Salem that assembles and processes the aforementioned value-added products. In this particular case, it was a pumpkin product that we produced for Burgerville, and Allison may touch on that shortly. But we're very, very proud of that. It represents a second certification for our company for a different class of packaging and products altogether. And as you'll see shortly, it just is one more step in the process of building a posture in the marketplace around Food Alliance certification and the practices of responsibility that are associated with that. Some might ask the question why to begin with, and Scott touched on the foundation reasons, but I'll give you a brief battle story. In 2005, we were being made aware of the increasing pressure that consumers were bringing to bear on the industry in general for better practices and substantiation of better practices. And there was a considerable amount of pressure mounted through the major distribution groups on their private label suppliers to comply with standards that they had written for themselves. The standards were good, and everything about that was good. Unfortunately, in our case, for them anyway, it represented an unnecessary addition of documentation and practices that in many, many cases we and our growers were already practicing. And we got quite a bit of pushback from our employees and from our growers on that process because at the time there was no assurance of cost recovery in any form, either through direct recompense or through rewards of cooperating with the program. And so we decided at that time, well, listen, if we're going to go to this effort, let's find out where we stand. And our initial purpose in submitting to an audit, frankly, was more to get a diagnosis, to get an evaluation of the elements of our practices and so forth that needed work. And that was what we really expected going into the audit. Well, Food Alliance was wonderful to work with us, and they led us along and helped us find our way through the process. And ultimately, it resulted in the certification that I mentioned during May of 2006. Actually, just later that spring. The audit standards are so commonsensical. It's worth paying attention to. That from a practical point of view, the audit standards that Scott reviewed just a moment ago deal with pretty darn practical issues, things like safe and fair working conditions. I mean, why would anyone contest that? They would have to be deceitful and outright ashamed to contest a principle like that. conservation and reuse and recycling. These are commonsensical and ethical issues for all of us. But in the state of Oregon, there are also economical issues. It's very expensive to use water wastefully, and it's very expensive to return to the city for wastewater processing water that has not been returned to the city in the cleanest possible condition. There is a practical standard regarding the chain of custody and responsible handling and maintaining the integrity of the ingredient. And that, of course, just makes total sense, and that is what drove us to depict the actual grower on the panel of our brand to identify where the product actually came from, and that is the case with any Food Alliance product that we might do. And of course, there are standards regarding nutrition and quality, and there are standards regarding meeting our legal requirements. The standard that drives us all, though, and that I think is really the energy behind Food Alliance certification, is the continual improvement. At the conclusion of a Food Alliance audit, we must submit a plan identifying how we're going to improve along the different standards and findings that were manifested during the audit itself, and we are audited by those plans the following year to see the degree to which we have complied. Now, the chart before you is a depiction of actual sales that have resulted within our lines of Food Alliance certified product, namely, has it paid off? And these are the sales part of it. The chart depicts the actual case sales. You can see in our fiscal year 07, which actually began June 1, 06, just exactly a month after our ultimate certification, the sales were meager, which one would expect. And you can see in fiscal year 08, which would have begun a year later, June 1 of 2007, it began to pick up. And then during our fiscal year of 09, which concluded last May 31, sales had really begun to go in a really, really good direction. Now, the context of all this is that we as a company produce overall about 3 million cases of product. So against that context, 20,000 cases is not a lot of product. However, the growth trend, the curve is unarguable, and we're just thrilled to death with the results that we're seeing in all of these products. Not one of the products that we produce with Food Alliance certification is not growing. Every one of them is growing and prospering, and we're just really gratified about that. But there are other let's see, I need to advance one slide, Jeff, if you can. I'm not able to. There we go. Then another aspect of how it's paid off is the new platform that it gave our company, really. I mentioned a moment ago that Food Alliance has, in effect, become a glue, if you will, that has led us into other product areas that we might not otherwise have gone into. And you heard me mention the pumpkin product that we produce for Burgerville. Frankly, I'm not sure that it would have occurred to us to produce a product like this had it not been for the Food Alliance certification and access to a grower that grew a Food Alliance certified pumpkin product. And the most important thing of all is we had a customer that wanted it as well, and helped lead us along as we assembled this value chain. We now process what we call dry soaked beans, namely kidney beans, garbanzos, pinto, and black beans. And these are canned products, although they may well be used in a chili product or two that we're working on. This product is sourced from a Food Alliance certified grower in Quincy, Washington, who's just been a wonderful partner. I've got natural chili on the list, which is not yet Food Alliance certified, but we're well on our way. As everybody on the phone probably realizes, there's just probably 1,000 different chilies out there in the marketplace, so why would anyone invent another chili? Well, to our knowledge, there's not a genuine natural chili, and this chili will be made with beef produced by Food Alliance certified producer that Scott mentioned earlier, Country Natural Beef. And we will use the beans produced by Tom Grubb in Quincy, Washington that I just referred to. In addition to that, we have a retail brand that is in distribution at many of the retailers here on the West Coast. Whole Foods being the most prominent, but New Seasons, a small chain in the Portland area, as well as grocery companies up and down the West Coast that pay attention to these sort of things. One more slide, please. Okay, how has it changed our company? This might be the most thrilling of all, and really maybe the most important. The parable of the seed is the parable in Scripture about the seed that falls on different kinds of soil. And in our case, it fell on good soil, and if you know your parables, the good seed produces a tremendous crop, providing cover for birds of the air and producing a great reward for the farmer that grows it. And that really has been the case with us. It really has unleashed really a bright and encouraging path for us to follow. And as I mentioned previously, it really hasn't replaced anything. It's only added just about all of these Food Alliance products that we have added to our line are new items for us. They're not replacing anything that we already do. They're simply adding. And the impact that it's had on our culture, we've always recycled water carefully. It's expensive to use and overuse and waste water in the state of Oregon, but we now have good, sound, ethical reasons in addition to that to pay attention to it. It's changed the way that we look at our growers. Now, I'm going to add one little statistic here. Over the last 6 years, we've increased our return to our green bean growers by over 37%, and we're very, very proud of that, and it wasn't easy to do. And it's not entirely related to Food Alliance certification, but Food Alliance certification has had a lot to do with it in the way that it has changed that we look at our growers. Closet tree huggers here is my tongue-in-cheek way of saying that when an organization of people has a purpose and a single goal, it gives everybody permission to practice what they view as the right thing. In this particular case, I'm quoting an individual with our company that wrote me an email after all this became well known, saying, "I've always been a closet tree hugger, and I'm excited to be in the lead now." And finally, once the genie is out of the bottle, you know what the rest is. You really can't put it back in. Not that we want to. We have no intention of putting it back in. We're delighted that the genie continues to spread, and that is, in fact, what's going on here. And I think my final slide, if you will, Jeff. And this is a depiction of the different packaging that we use, the well-known cans on the right, and then the different forms of plastic packaging there on the left in the many different sizes. And that concludes my comments, Jeff. I don't believe I was designated to introduce Allison, but I'd be delighted to tell you everything I know about Allison.
Well, I think Scott's champing at the bit to introduce Allison.
Good. So, he'll do a good job.
All right. Good.
Thank you, Peter. Allison serves as the Director of Supply Chain for Burgerville, where she champions the company's sustainability values in every link in the chain, from the farm to the kitchen to the dining room and even to the compost bin. Prior to joining Burgerville in 2006, Allison served as the Purchasing Director for Oregon Health and Science University. And between that job and the Burgerville job, she took a full year off, traveled the world, and did something that we've always all wanted to do, eating and drinking her way through the local food traditions of 27 countries on 6 continents in 365 days. When she got back, Allison knew she was looking for a company that would see her year of culinary travel as an asset rather than a gap in her resume. And she's grateful every day that Burgerville is that company. Allison?
Thanks, Scott. On my last slide, I have my email information if people want to ask me questions about how to quit your job and travel the world and eat local food for a year, but I won't be covering that in my slides. And can you forward to the next slide for me? Thanks. Especially for those of you that aren't on the West Coast, Burgerville's a Northwest regional brand, so let me give just a little bit of background about the company. Burgerville actually started as a creamery. The original company was the Holland Creamery, and the parent company name for the company now is the Holland Incorporated. So in 1922, the Holland Creamery was founded in Vancouver, Washington, and then slowly and gradually from there, the family business grew to include making some of their own ice cream. And then they opened a few retail restaurants in and around the downtown Vancouver, Washington area called the Holland restaurants. They had old-style Dutch windmills on the tops of them, and it was the kind of place you could go and get a slice of homemade apple pie a la mode and sit at the counter and have a good conversation. George Propstra, the son of the original dairyman, opened the first Burgerville in 1961. So we're coming up next year on our 50th anniversary of being a local family-owned regional burgers and fries and milkshakes company. And right from the beginning, George Propstra recognized that he wouldn't be able to compete on price with the national chains that were popping up. So he identified right from day one at Burgerville that quality would be a differentiator. Burgerville has always served fresh, never frozen beef. We've always had a commitment since day one to keeping as many of our dollars in the local economy as we possibly can. So just doing business with our neighbors as a way of doing good business. And the Propstra family and Burgerville have a long-standing legacy and tradition in this region of community service and charitable giving. So from those core values that have been present at the company since the beginning, and long before there would have been a sustainability business dialogue, you can see how today those same core values inform Burgerville's contemporary set of sustainability initiatives and goals, and how being a good citizen shows up at Burgerville today. So today we have 39 units in Oregon and Washington. Most of those are fairly close in the greater Portland, Oregon, Vancouver, Washington metropolitan area. We're about a $70 million company right now with 1,500 workers. That goes up and down seasonally. We have big spikes around the holidays and in the summer. And a big part of my responsibilities at Burgerville are to kind of forward those original values in our supply chain, especially starting with our food. So I'm accountable for ensuring that the menu we're serving is sourced from the best, fresh, local, sustainable ingredients that we can possibly find. Burgerville also has we're about to celebrate our 5-year anniversary of purchasing wind power credits equal to 100% of our energy use as a company. Also, for about 5 years, we've been recycling all of our used canola oil, our cooking oil, into biofuel through Sequential Biofuels, which is a Northwest biofuel company as well. We have, as far as we know, we have the most comprehensive composting, recycling, and sustainable packaging program in the fast food, the quick service industry. And Burgerville offers deeply affordable healthcare benefits for our hourly workforce. So imagine you are a grill cook or a cashier at Burgerville, and you've been with the company for 6 months or more. You work 20 hours a week with us or more. It makes you eligible for full medical, dental, and vision coverage for $20 a month. If you needed to insure your spouse on that program too, it's about, I think it's about $70 a month, a little under $100 if you need to insure an entire family on that program. We really hold people as, and our investment in people is the most important sustainability initiative at Burgerville. By investing in people, we believe we grow leaders who go out and make a difference in their work, in their communities, and in the world. And I'll talk about how some of those investments in me help me do great work in our supply chain. Can I have the next slide? So my role centrally at Burgerville is to really ensure that same broad spectrum of sustainable business values shows up in as many ways as possible through our extended supply chain. So that means certainly building great long-term direct relationships with the local growers, ranchers, fishers, bakers, cheesemakers that are the core of our menu, as well as processing links and distribution links as well. Building long-term relationships as a foundation for creating the next wave of sustainable business innovation together beyond what any one company could do alone. It also means extending those values into our own operations. So really looking at, once we've got those great ingredients in our restaurants, are we stewards of water and energy and time and talent that it takes to turn the raw things we buy into the finished menu that we serve. And then just always looking both in our own four walls as well as where we invest dollars in the local business economy, making sure we're always doing our part to ensure that the most profitable companies are the ones that are taking the best care of people and the planet and the resources that we share. Next slide, please. So why is third-party certification important at Burgerville? That's actually a picture of me on the left there doing a site visit to Clearwater Cranberries in Port Orford, Oregon. They're a cooperative of 2 family cranberry growers, just got Food Alliance certified this year, and you know, we don't use a ton of cranberries a year at Burgerville. We sprinkle them on salads, that sort of thing. So as much as I wish I had the leisure to have that kind of quality on-site experience with everyone who produces food for us, we're a bigger company than that, and our beef is probably the best example of that. It takes 120 family farms working together within the Country Natural Beef Cooperative to provide enough volume for Burgerville's hamburgers and the other regional high-end groceries that are showcasing that premium Food Alliance certified beef product. So as much as I wish all I had to do all day long is visit and tour Western ranches, I just can't afford to touch every ranch with me and my small team here at Burgerville. So knowing that the Food Alliance certification program is visiting every ranch on site allows me to express to our guests with a deep level of confidence that the continuity of values is present in every small ranch, every small family company collaborating to bring sustainable food production to scale and to the Burgerville table. It also enables me to start extending that same set of values from the great farmers and ranchers we work with to other key links in the supply chain. And the project Peter talked about with the pumpkin processing that we did this year, where both the pumpkin came from a certified source and the processors involved, including Truitt Brothers, were all Food Alliance certified as well. It's just another layer of continuity I'm able to bring to each link in the supply chain, starting from the source. Third-party sources also play a key role in how we spread the word about what we're up to at Burgerville. It's one thing for me to try and get local news coverage about something new we're doing on our menu, just focusing on, hey, we're really proud of this. It's another thing to be able to call on groups like the Food Alliance to give a third-party perspective on why the decisions Burgerville is making are adding up to a significant difference in the way our national food system is working and has the potential to work in the future. So that third-party credibility backing our story as we look to spread the word through earned media is a pretty central approach to how we grow our business. And then for our guests, I don't think it would be truthful for me to say that the average Burgerville guest necessarily knows a lot about the Food Alliance right now, or is specifically seeking out that seal at the customer level. I would say that they are choosing our brand because they trust that we are making those decisions and doing the math for them behind the scenes, so that they can just choose us and know that we're sourcing things as responsibly and producing our menu as responsibly as we possibly can. So it really helps us earn and sustain the trust of guests and create guests for life at Burgerville. So at the beginning, I shared some kind of qualitative stories about Burgerville and our sustainable initiatives. One way I'm using Food Alliance certification and other third-party certifiers that we use in our menu, like Marine Stewardship Council certified halibut that we serve, fair trade coffee that we serve. Another way that helps me is it helps me start to be able to quantify our sustainable food efforts. So these are just some results from our 2009 food purchasing. In 2009, we spent over 70% of our food dollars with local businesses in the greater Pacific Northwest region. So that's including Alaskan seafood, a little bit of Northern California produce, Idaho and Washington and Oregon. That equaled a 21% increase in local spend for us, 2009 over 2008. We spent 26% of our total food dollars last year on third-party certified ingredients, and that's a percentage I'll be working actively to increase in years to come. So that included Food Alliance, Marine Stewardship Council, and fair trade seals in that calculation. We spent 15% on Food Alliance certified products. That includes all 100% of the beef we serve through the Country Natural Beef Cooperative with all 120 participating ranches, all certified. It includes ingredients like shepherd's grain flour and products like the pumpkin that we talked about that we partnered with Truitt Brothers and Stalbush Island Farms to produce this year. I hope that gives you a good background on Burgerville and how third-party certification is serving us now and how we see to have that serve us moving forward. Looking forward to question and answers.
Okay, Scott, do you want to just sort of do a bit of a closeout for us?
Sure. Thank you. I want to highlight just a couple things that both Peter and Allison touched on. One is the sort of learn as you go and build from a foundation concept that they both mentioned in different ways. Peter talked about his experience as a he was our guinea pig as a processing client, and that we had to learn as much about that world as he had to learn about our sustainability world, and it was an iterative process of building and refining the certification process in a way that accommodated the reality but held true to the values that we were trying to encase in the process of certification. In Allison's case, she talked about starting small and starting with a small number of products and then expanding and using the certification as a benchmark for measuring those purchases. So I think that's a really important notion that you can't do this all overnight. You have to start somewhere and start in a strategic place and then build outward from it. And in Peter's case, that's about expanding the number of branded products that are Food Alliance certified. And in Allison's case, it's a matter of expanding the number of Food Alliance certified products that are coming into her supply chain. The other thing I think I would draw out from Allison's presentation is this notion that a brand well identified with as being an important buyer and purchaser and highlighter of regional products here in the Northwest. The brand was built on that from the beginning, and now they've grafted, I think, very effectively this notion of sustainability and how those purchasing decisions extend to considerations about the environment and people, not just in their own four walls, which has also always been a consideration from them, but within their supply chain as well. The last piece I would add is that the seed of change notion that Peter mentioned is not to be underestimated. The cultural shift that begins to happen in companies, in our experience, when there's a framework to think about these issues and there's permission, as Peter put it, to think about how they can innovate on the basis of sustainability considerations, can have a dramatic effect and really increase the momentum of these kinds of efforts. So you're looking now at a slide that attempts to capture some of the lessons from this kind of work and the kinds of things we've heard in the presentations. This is certainly about values and it's about stewardship, but it's also very much about business. How do we appeal to the business instincts of people in these companies to exercise the kinds of values we're trying to advance, but do it in a way that works within the day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year considerations that they have to adhere to remain profitable and to continue to employ people in a meaningful way. We can't lose sight of that in our zeal to have the right kind of ideology and to deploy that ideology, and we can't force it on people. We have to appeal to them on their basis of their very real instincts. And another way of saying what I said at the front end of the conversation was buyers and consumers want traceability. They want to know where products come. They want transparency. They want to know how those products are produced, and they want accountability, which comes from independent verification of the methods used to grow those products. That's really the leverage point for the kind of change that we're talking about. And if we can do that effectively in a way that is both achievable and meaningful for businesses, that's where the sweet spot is in terms of making change. The next point is that this is a high bar. This is not an industry floor. We have to set standards for certification that are high enough to create distinction and meaning and differentiation for these products. It's one of the fundamental differences between an approach that says we're going to create guidelines for all of the producers of a certain product in a certain region and try to lift all boats. There is some value to an approach like that, but that is a very different approach and is by definition setting a lower bar so that everybody can participate. That is fundamentally different. It's a voluntary business decision to become certified, and a seal, a certification by itself, doesn't sell one more product or bolster one more penny of price increase. The strong kinds of marketing and storytelling about authentic changes in the food procurement system are what sell products. And when it's backed by independent third-party certification, then you're really in an advantageous position. I think Peter's depiction of the kinds of labeling and stories about the evolution of his company underscore that point very well. So that's how I would kind of bring the whole thing into focus.
Okay, great. So thank you very much. These were great presentations, and we have a good queue of questions. I want to encourage people to continue to type in their questions, and we will have our panelists answer as many as possible. So first question for you, Scott, about the mechanics of the certification and auditing. The question is, does Food Alliance staff actually do the auditing, or are there private organizations that are partnered with Food Alliance that do the auditing and certification process?
Yeah, great question. Part of the independence of a third-party certification is having someone other than yourself actually conduct the audits. In Food Alliance's case, we actually delegate the responsibility for administering the whole inspection and reporting process to another agency. It's actually an organization called International Certification Services, which also does organic certification, among a host of others, based in North Dakota, but with a network of independent contractors, trained inspectors, trained in the use of Food Alliance certification tools throughout North America. So we are the writers of the standards. We ultimately issue the final certification statement or decision, but they're conducting the audits, recording the results, and reporting them to us.
Okay.
See, related to that, there was a question about whether independent third-party, whether an organization, a certification organization has to be nonprofit in order to achieve that level of independent credibility? The answer to that is no. There are plenty of for-profit certification organizations that maintain a high degree of independence from those who issue the standards, for example. Many organic certifiers are for-profit, and they are overseen by the National Organic Program. And so being a nonprofit is not any guarantor by itself of that independence.
Great. I have a question for Peter. Why did Truitt decide to pursue Food Alliance certification instead of USDA Organic?
Well, the short answer is that we also process some organic product as well. The practical part of the answer is that, frankly, the pressures that were brought to bear on us by the marketplace were pressures about authenticating and certifying our practices that related to sustainability. So that was where the pressure actually came from. Now, to look at both organic programs and the sustainable programs, by that I mean the Food Alliance approach, the audit standards for Food Alliance are quite expansive, detailing not only the proper management of pesticides and other kinds of chemicals, but also expand into the social equity part of it, the community part of it, safe treatment, safe and fair working conditions, namely the way that we treat our people, chain of custody, that's a part of organic as well, of course, and so on. So it really, this is an overstatement, but and perhaps a simplification, but frankly, it's a little bit harder to demonstrate your worth in Food Alliance certification than it is in organic. Now, don't get me wrong. By that, I don't mean it's easy to be certified organic. Far from it. But there are considerably more criteria to meet in a Food Alliance audit than there is in an organic audit. Those are the simple answers.
Okay. Allison, a question for you. How much does a Burgerville burger cost? In other words, what is the direct price of using more sustainable food on your menu?
So the basic, been serving it for 49 years, Burgerville hamburger right now costs $1.29, and the same beef that we serve in that $1.29 hamburger is also served by many others as well in town, but it's served by our best French bistro in town. It's called Carafe Bistro. It's co-owned, and its executive chef is an expat from France, and it's one of the only places in town I can get steak tartare. So the raw beef preparation on our best French bistro's menu here in Portland is the same beef that we serve on that $1.29 hamburger.
That's great. A question for you, Scott. Can you suggest some considerations of third-party food certification for a food processor that might be included in a feasibility study and business plan?
Yeah, great question. I think the first and probably most important consideration is what's the target market, which is a consideration in any business plan. But the relevant point here is, does that target what do you know about that target market and their sensibilities around these many issues that certifiers of different types certify for? Is it a market that's asking tough questions about animal welfare? Is it a market whose customers are asking tough questions about the kinds of working conditions that farm labor work under? If the answer to one or more questions like that is affirmative, then I would suggest that looking at third-party certifications and which ones cover the issues you believe your target market to have the deepest concerns about should be a cornerstone of that analysis. I'll give you a couple of examples. In the college and university food service world right now, animal welfare is very high level of concern, as increasingly is farm labor. companies like Bon Appetit and Whole Foods have gotten swept up in the advocacy in Florida around the conditions that particularly tomato pickers get involved in, and they're working hard to find ways to respond to that concern among their customer base. So certification can help with things like that.
A question for Peter about accounting. How do you know that the increase in sales of the Food Alliance certified cans is due to the third-party certification rather than perhaps some other marketing strategies? Maybe Peter's having trouble unmuting. Let me serve a question over. There you go.
There you go. How's this?
Great. Perfect.
I forgot to hit my mute button. How can you prove otherwise? Really and truly, we built our brand around achieving Food Alliance certification. So this brand that now has the Food Alliance insignia on it did not exist before certification. So that's I don't know how to explain it otherwise. You could contrast the growth of these certified products with the growth or decline of other product categories pretty easily, and we do that regularly. And we measure the margin contribution of each of those products, and it's regularly contrasted with our other items. So the simple answer in summary is that the brand and the growth of the brand, which is tantamount to a Food Alliance certified product, did not exist before certification.
Okay. An economic downturn question. Is there any premium for Food Alliance certified products that you have seen? Or if there isn't a premium that can be asked from the consumer, is it difficult for producers to justify spending the extra time required to get the certification and making direct market connections?
Is that for me?
Sure, take it.
Oh, okay, well, Scott can elaborate on this part of it, but a bedrock principle of our relationship with our growers is that the price that we pay to our growers gives them a fair return for what they do. In other words, to be quite specific about it, when we negotiate the price on bean products with Tom Grebb in Quincy, Washington, Tom comes prepared with his costs and the margin that he has to have for his operation and his growers. And although it would be disingenuous to say that we don't haggle with him, we do, but the resulting price starts there. And where there's marketplace pressures, then there's give and take on both sides. It's a real different way of doing things, and the resulting price that we present to the marketplace and folks like Burgerville is basically the same method. It is our cost plus the fair return that we expect, and we're quite open about it. If any of our customers for these products wanted to look at our costs and our margins on it, we'd be more than happy to show it to them. But that is the bedrock. It's based on the inputs and the cost of those inputs, and it begins right on the farm or the ranch with what a fair return to the grower or the rancher is.
Okay, and a really quick question for Scott. We're running out of time, but there's a question about random testing for contaminants as well as the process audits. Is that something your auditors
Yeah, no,
do?
we do not do random chemical testing. No, we do random testing we do random spot audits of growers when we believe that's warranted.
Okay. Well, I really want to thank our three presenters, Scott Exo from Food Alliance, Peter Truitt from Truitt Brothers, and Alison Dennis from Burgerville. They are every day helping to transform our food system. National Good Food Networks are the third Thursday each month at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Our next webinar on March 18th has a focus on projects in the Southwest, working with diverse communities and connecting rural producers to urban consumers. The National Good Food Network Southwest regional teams have some fascinating projects that are great models for working with diverse communities all throughout the country. You can register for the Linking Diverse Communities Through Healthy Food Examples from the Southwest webinar at ngfn.org/webinars. We also have a growing archive, as I mentioned earlier, the recordings, slides, written questions and answers, and other resources. Same place, ngfn.org/webinars. Another service the NGFN provides to connect people are its national and regional convenings. We are co-sponsoring an event in Kansas City in a couple weeks I wanted to let you all know about. The Good Food, Good Futures Conference takes place on March 2nd and 3rd. There will be detailed working sessions, provocative discussions, and exercises on regional food systems, how agricultural practices and health are inseparable, how to achieve local success in a global market base, social justice, food and health, and more. The conference is absolutely free, but you do need to reserve your spot since space is limited. You can go to AmericanRoyal.com directly or on ngfn.org at the bottom right of our homepage. There's a link for conference information and registration. You can find us on YouTube, on Twitter, and our website, ngfn.org. I'd like to encourage you to add your name, interests, bio, and other information to our growing database of people, organizations, and funders, increasing your ability to connect to people within your regions and nationally. Look for the database link in the resources section of our site. If you haven't already, sign up for our email updates. Also a link on the ngfn.org homepage. Please contact us at any time. Our email address is contact@ngfn.org. The NGFN would like to thank you and our panelists for your time today. Once again, let me encourage you to fill out the survey that will open up in your web browser in just a moment, and this concludes the webinar.